Welcome to Third Floor Views, a production of Chesapeake Family Life, where we talk about health, education, and living with kids. I'm your host, Janet Jefferson. Today, we continue our environmental sustainability series on Third Floor Views. We're honoring Earth Day all month long, and the next few episodes will focus on exciting local work that is being done in the environmental field. So today, we are talking about green building. Joining us is Dr. Polly Bart, owner of Greenbuilders Incorporated, which is an award-winning green contractor company in Maryland. Dr. Bart was the third woman to receive the PhD in city planning from the University of California at Berkeley. She was one of 4 writers to create the President's Urban Policy Report to Congress in 1980. And as chair of the Green Building Subcommittee for Baltimore County's Commission on Environmental Quality, she was pivotal in the passing of Maryland's first tax credit legislation to encourage LEED certified construction. Thank you so much, Dr. Bart, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure.
To our viewers, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put those in the comments section and we will get to those as we can. Let's get started. So let's start at the very beginning. I would love for you just to speak about what is green building.
Well, it can be many different things, but as I do it, it means thinking about the effect on the environment of the choices that we make. It also means our health, our lifestyles, green lifestyle, and giving back if we can to supporting the local economy by the purchase choices we make.
So it sounds like there's a lot of different factors at play, and it's much more inclusive than maybe people might assume. And there's a lot of different things to think about. The other thing I want to make sure that we talk about is, for those who don't know, I'd love for you to explain what is LEED? What is a LEED certification? What does that mean and what does that entail?
Well, it stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. It is the big building energy rating or green rating system. That means institutions, multifamily, hotels, big buildings, not so much residential. It is very recent and has spread across the country, is now mandated in a lot of jurisdictions that you have to be LEED certified. It's a very high standard. The intention, one interesting thing is this is not government. It didn't start as government. This started as a grassroots, privately thought out rating system. So the intention was to change the industry, to get way ahead of common practice and set a bar that people could try to achieve if they wanted to. At the beginning, it was totally voluntary.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of your work now is done in a more residential setting. I was wondering if you could speak just a little bit about your approach, sort of all the different systems in a house, thinking about water and plumbing, heating and cooling, lighting and electrical, all these different systems. And when you are going about the process of green building, what are the things that you're thinking about? And what does this really look like?
Well, I think about a lot of things. The first thing I do when I walk in is be sure I know which way is north so that you have some sense of where the lighting is, the microclimate, the habitat, a lot of things. But what you asked about systems, they're each different. With lighting, electrical, you want safety and you want it to work. You want function. You want enough power where you need it.
Right.
Okay. Safety and function. With water and plumbing, we have got a lot of water here in Maryland, so that isn't as critical, but there are still a lot of things that you can do for water conservation. I look a lot at stormwater outside because we have plenty of that, and that can be a concern. Heating and cooling, I try to think about comfort, because if people are comfortable in a house, they're not going to be constantly fooling with the thermostat, that kind of thing. My goal on a renovation is net zero for the new work. So if I do an addition, I want that not to increase your bills at all. And you can do that if you make it tightly insulated, replacing a leaky wall, if that makes sense.
Right.
That's a good goal for that.
So you're thinking about a lot of different things. How might that be different than maybe the approach that a more traditional contractor would have? Because, they're working with the same systems. How is your approach different?
Well, again, green is about a lot more. The systems are what you basically don't see, but
Hmm.
we're also looking at all the materials. We're looking at our waste stream, what we throw away. We're looking at what we buy. So there are a lot of other factors besides the systems. I think the main difference in green is not cost, it is effort. You have to think about it more. And that's
Hmm.
because we're pioneering more than because we're green. If you're going to do something new and you want it to work, you have to really look at it. So with my clients, they have to be prepared and interested to do some thinking before we charge into the project.
Okay. So there's more there's more thought involved. Does that also bring more creativity or more space for the clients to be involved? Again, how might it compare to something a little bit more traditional?
Well, green is not the only type of construction that does this, but there are two basic ways of approaching a project. There's typically design, bid, build.
Mhm.
You have an architect, gives you plans, hopes they're somewhere in the budget range you had told them, but sometimes that's not true. Then you bid it out to several people, you pick one of them and they build it. With green and with we're not the only ones to do this. You bring the builder on board. Typically, the builder has a seat at the table during design. That's very important, not only for cost, but for quality of the design. So it ends up being builder friendly.
Hmm.
So I'm a design builder. Again, design build and green are not the same thing.
Mhm.
Design build works well with green, if that made any sense.
Definitely. So it's a more close knit relationship from the very beginning. You're more involved, and that's going to allow for a more cohesive, thoughtful product in the end. It makes a lot of sense. It's certainly when you're thinking about so many different factors. Um, so we've sort of touched on this a little bit, but why would someone choose to um, do have a green building over something more traditional? What are the benefits?
Well, um, you had mentioned lead before. And in the commercial area, um, it's a requirement of lead that everybody sit at the table and they do what's called a lead charrette, where you look to see what points you're going to go after. And what people discovered was A, it was kind of fun, and B, you got such better project design. So people who had
Mm,
no interest in green became very interested in lead because the
hmm,
quality went up. The same thing's true in residential. You do tend to get better quality projects when you're thinking about it to this extent.
hmm,
Um, the other thing is that in terms of beauty, it turns out that when you do things green, oftentimes they're stunning. Um, and the imitators have come along with distressed furniture, for example. They're trying to produce what you get naturally, organically, if you're doing green. But you
hmm.
don't have to hire some guy with chains to go around and beat up your furniture.
Sounds good. Um, what would you say are maybe some of the challenges with green design and green building?
I think the most important one for a homeowner is that you do need to live actively in the house. It is not a build and forget it, typically.
Hmm.
Um, I need to kind of keep an eye on things. I have 5 or 6 different heating and cooling systems here. So I am living actively, applying heat and cooling where I am, paying attention to where I'm in the house, actively living in my home.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
So
some
it's
green things take maintenance, not
gotcha.
all. Some take no maintenance.
Okay, so it's sort of you would work with a client and say, okay, like what is your goal for this space? What do you really want to achieve? Are you living here full time? And what how much work do you want to put into it on a daily basis? But I'm sure that that work pays off, you know, in whether it be your bills or your comfort or whatever. I'm sure that Or maybe it even just makes it more rewarding because you're more in tune with how your house is working.
Well, if I'm doing a green roof for somebody, for example, once a year you have to go up on the roof or have someone do it and pull out tree seedlings. Now,
Mm.
for some people, that is not a negative. They enjoy the idea that they've got some additional gardening opportunity. So it's kind of a trade-off. Also, if someone tells me I want low maintenance, then we'll use hardy plank, for example, which is a put it on the house and forget it lifetime warranty if you get them to do the painting at the factory. So you can go for low maintenance. It's just that many green things do require some keeping an eye on them. I'm making this sound worse than it is. It's a minor factor. Living actively in your house, if you have a family and you become aware of who is where, that is
Mhm,
not a bad thing. That's
mhm.
just that is part of a green lifestyle. It's just to enjoy your home in a way you hadn't before.
Right, right, absolutely. Um, okay, so we talked a little bit about your process, how, you're going to be starting from the very beginning. You'll be involved with the architect and with the client coming up with these designs together to make sure that they're seamless. Could you just walk me through the entire process? So you have a new client that's reached out to you. They're excited to work on a residential project. What does it look like from beginning to end?
Well, this is very individual to me. Different green firms do it differently. Um, I have an in-depth initial phone call, which is free, where I find out, do we have a feasible project? That is not typically a question an architect asks, but I get my kicks out of my career satisfaction out of building.
Mhm,
So I want the design to be something someone's going to live in. So
mhm,
that first conversation, I talk about money up front.
mhm.
If you can still like me at the end of the first conversation, you're going to love me because all the hard questions come up initially. Then I set up a meeting on site. It's a 2-hour design session. I charge for that.
Mhm.
That goes well. Then I offer a design contract, which gets us through to ready to build, but there's no commitment to go ahead.
Mm,
So by the time that's done, we are a pretty good team
mhm.
and we know if we're comfortable with each other. We've worked out, communication, that kind of thing. So what else about process?
And then you're in it, right? You're building. And what does that look like in terms of when you're actually building either the house or the renovation? Are you constantly in contact with the client trying to decide different things, whether it be, oh, do you want this sink or that sink or this tile or that tile? Are you are you doing research together to see what's out there? What does it look like when you're in the middle of it?
Well, it depends a lot on the client's preferences. If the client's interested, I can give you an example of a current project where I discovered Camp Small in Baltimore, where city trees that have been brought down by the city are being milled by a couple of great young guys and resold. And they had a stack of white oak, gorgeous flooring at less cost than it would have cost me to put it in something much less. So I came to the client and I said, are you interested in this? Would you like it? And of course, she was all over it. So there is that kind of thing that happens. I usually take a field trip or two with the clients to go pick a material. We go and look at a soapstone slab to see which piece of it we want to use for our countertop. Um, or we can go out and look at green roof plants. I
Mm.
also involve kids, both in the design process and during construction. It's worked well so far. It's such an opportunity. So we play a game initially with the drawings of having the kids find out where they are in the house on the drawings. Doing a renovation is a very um, big deal for kids, much more than for parents, because their environment is smaller typically than the parents.
Mm,
So if they can have a sense of control and interest and education, it makes the project better. And
mm,
then during the project, I have a couple of times when the kids can do something, for example, with natural, safe cotton insulation, they can put that in the wall. they're always going to feel different about that piece of wall because they helped make it. They helped make their mom's office warm and secure. It's really a beautiful thing.
That's incredible. And I'm sure those memories last a lifetime, because those kids are like, I helped build my house.
Yeah.
That's pretty magical. Um, so we've talked about what it looks like and what the process looks like. Who would you say really should consider green building? Who are your clients, and what do they want? What are they like? What is sort of your average person that you're working with?
Well, they're completely wonderful, of course. I mean, they really are. I'm just blessed with the people I've gotten to work with, who are usually kind of brilliant and very involved in some way or other, interested. I was thinking about this, and it occurred to me that my clients typically are family oriented. I just thought they often are. They're very involved with their kids, and sometimes with an extended family. And that seems to go along with an interest in the environment and in this type of process.
Mm-hmm.
It can be very family centered.
When you're working with a client, do you ever find yourself, or do you think of yourself as an educator as you're, working with them and trying to design what their home is going to be like? You're also introducing a lot of things that maybe aren't as traditional as they could have chosen. So do you find you're doing a lot of teaching as you go along the way?
Well, I appreciate the question. My mission is to help change my industry, and I'm very serious about that. So, working with one client is great, but if we create stories that they're going to tell or their kids are going to tell, then that's an educational thing for sure. One of
Mm.
my proudest moments was when I did a green roof with clients, and their son was in school and did an architecture thing and did a little model, and his model had a green roof. So it wasn't just me and them, it was a whole classroom full of kids who were affected that way. um, yes, I want my projects talked about. I used to give and still do sometimes an open house when the project's done, if the clients are interested in that, so people can
Mm.
see and we can talk about what we did.
Yeah. So you're not only educating the client, but also their children, and then potentially even their friends, and then even the larger community. If you're opening up the house for everyone to visit, it's a huge part of, it sounds like, what you're doing. And it sounds like it also even has the ability to bring communities together, because as they're learning and listening, they're also connecting with each other. It sounds like this is it is it is a project that has a lot of pieces that connect everyone, both materials and people, together.
So in the story direction, several times I have been able to take the kitchen, for example, that they were taking out, and take it down six blocks to a neighbor
Hmm.
who was redoing, we knew, their basement as a shop and using those cabinets.
Hmm.
We took some historic flooring that happened to match. And again, these are neighbors, and some
Right.
of their materials are going in to be reused in a nearby home. That's very exciting when that happens.
Huh.
And of
So
course,
when
introducing those people is great fun.
Right. And so when you're working on a house and you're thinking about green, not only are you thinking that about the choices that you are making, the materials that you're choosing, and sort of what it looks like from the beginning of production to the end of its life, but you're also thinking about what do you do with any leftover pieces, or pieces that really you had no part in choosing, like whether it be old cabinets or old flooring. What are you going to do with those, and where they end up?
Very
It's
important. Yeah.
sounds really holistic, and maybe a way that a lot of homeowners haven't even thought about all the different pieces that go into it, and where those pieces end up in the end.
Yeah. I
Um,
think that before people get overwhelmed, we don't do all this stuff with any one project. We sort of find out what really will excite them and make them feel wonderful, and then we go for that. We don't try
mm,
to do everything. It's
mm,
important not to try to do everything. Just do something.
that's helpful to remember as well, because it can feel so overwhelming. It's like, oh, I want to do this. I want to do it really well. What is achievable and what is reasonable. Um,
My job is to work with people who want to do green,
mm,
but aren't sure how to do it. And that's what I do, is I show them how. Um, and also education goes both ways. I learn from my clients. Yeah, that's important too.
let's get into the numbers. So I feel like we've hinted at this a little bit. Let's talk about what this costs and how does this compare? How does green building compare to more traditional choices and traditional methods? And who, we talked about who your clients are and who is green building for, but when we're really talking about the cost, what is achievable?
I don't have any clients who want to spend more for green. I'd be out
Hmm.
of business if I did that. My goal, and upfront, is we say, what would it cost if you did this in the conventional way? And that's our number.
Hmm.
I try to find out what they want to spend. Now, we do that by making different choices. Many things about green are actually cheaper. I don't mean long term, I mean now,
Hmm.
because I encourage people to keep more of what they've got. We're not going to move a window 6 inches if it could stay where it is,
Hmm.
if you follow me.
Hmm.
And we do less in some areas and then be able to splurge in other areas. Again, that requires thought about what's important.
Hmm.
And we
Hmm.
also, my clients typically may want an incredible quality natural stone countertop, but they don't need gold plated faucets. So there's that. Yeah.
Right, right. So reasonable trade-offs and thinking about what is a client's priority. I
Mhm.
do think it is a common maybe misconception that green building is more expensive, and that maybe you will get that cost back, that upfront cost later on as it becomes more efficient, cost efficient to run. But from what you're saying, it sounds like no, that you can absolutely do this with a client for the same price as what it would cost for a traditional build.
I always do it for the same cost as a traditional build. But if you just went out to build a green house and
Mhm.
you did everything and you had solar panels and that solar panels cost more. If you did all of those things, it would absolutely cost a great deal more, but
Hmm.
that's not necessary.
Hmm. Mhm. Mhm. Um, So I want to talk just a moment about where you are right now. I'm looking at your screen and I'm seeing huge windows on one side, and I'm looking at your ceiling and I'm seeing, different colors and textures, and even your wall. I love it if you could just speak a little bit about where you are and what's going on in that space.
I call this place Nirvana, it named itself. And this is deep green. This is out in the woods. I'm off grid. You're talking to me now in solar power. Um, and this is the front, and those are salvaged windows, mostly from Second Chance. And there's so much I could tell you. This has straw bale and a green roof. But to focus just on the last thing I did, which is this spiral staircase. Did I see it?
Yes.
So the challenge, this was a cost-free, essentially, because those were leftover pieces from other projects of an oak that I milled myself. And as you can see, it's a nice design and you can see through it. I've got books on it. Let's get a little closer here. There's, as I say, there's lots I could show you, but this one
Yeah,
was striking. We'll just
absolutely.
do a quick circle around. It's a thatched roof with some natural insulation that I'm still in the process of, that's too dark. Don't know how to
Oh, no,
switch.
no, I can definitely see it. Yeah, that's incredible.
And then the back is all straw bale. I have a composting toilet. Uh, the kitchen is here this is 1,600 square feet, very carefully designed. So it's got 2 bedrooms, a bath. Kitchen is in the great room. So it's not large, but it does everything for me.
Mhm.
And it has a packed earth floor.
Oh my gosh.
That's an alpaca rug, but this floor is just what was here because I happened to build this on a clay So I didn't disturb anything.
Uh-huh.
And these are salvaged pieces from the dumpster of my countertop fabricators. It's not so good at most of the computer.
Oh my
So
gosh, that's
everything
incredible.
has a story.
So you said you described this as deep green.
Mhm.
Would, have you worked with clients to achieve things like this as well? Or is this sort of a passion project that you were able to achieve on the side because, it's what you do?
Um, I have done one other totally deep green off-grid project, and I've done an addition, for example, that is deep green. It's straw bale. Typically, though, we're going for medium green, which is looks more like looks like conventional, typically, with a
Uh-huh.
few wrinkles in it, or light green, where we just do something.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
The
That's
project, we're gonna do something. Now, I sneak in a lot of stuff, meaning
oh.
that I'm thinking about where things are coming from, and I'm avoiding, some things that I need to avoid. That
Mhm.
doesn't affect the client. And I don't mean it's a secret, but they're fine as long as yeah, so it doesn't bother them. They don't mind if I'm using a sustainable material.
Right, right. Um, so you have been in the field for a long time and have seen a lot of change and been a
I
part of
love
a lot of different facets um, of of sort of green building and green design and policy. I'd wonder if you could just take a little bit of time to talk a little bit about where we've come from in terms of green building, and then where we're going. Like, what do you see in the future that's coming up that you're excited about?
Oh, that's such a good question. Green is very new. I got to see the sort of green wave coming in when I founded Green Builders. My teacher in the small business course I was in advised me not to do that.
Really?
Yeah, he thought that that was never going to go anywhere.
Oh my
So that
gosh.
was in 2004. Um, green on the large building green has kind of taken over, but not in residential. So my hope is that companies like mine can show a way that you and I can feel better about our personal choices.
Mhm.
People tell me that they are surprised at how good it feels that they at least tried. A renovation or a new construction is the biggest impact you're going to have on in your lifetime, probably on the environment.
Hmm.
And so to at least consider it makes people feel good.
Hmm.
And I'd love to see that spread. There's so many people who'd like to do that if they only knew how.
Mhm.
It's a
Mhm.
little frustrating to me that I it, it's kind of hard to get. I thank you so much for the opportunity to explain this, so maybe more people might try it.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so my last question is sort of to your point there. Our viewers and listeners are from all over Maryland. So some are definitely in and around Baltimore. So they might be calling you any moment and saying, how can I get on your schedule? But there are other viewers or listeners who are from different parts. Do you have any sort of recommended resources that you would send people towards if they're interested in green building and green design? And that could be anywhere from you know different directories that might be useful, or different organizations that are useful, or even your favorite stores to go to, or your favorite books about green building that might be accessible to the layperson.
I can add some more, but I can give you three off the top of my head. The U.S. Green Building Council is a enormous website, and it has a residential section. The Maryland Green Registry, again, is a list. But also there is the Amicus, AMICUS Green Building Center in Kensington,
Mm,
another pioneer. We started kind of the same time. Obviously, that's down in the DC suburbs, but he has a broader, and he researched anything that's sold there is he's carefully checked out, and he also knows contractors. He knows me, for example. So that's another place to talk
mhm.
for information and resources and possibly people.
Mhm, mhm. For people who are interested in pursuing green building and green design, where should they start? Should they start with someone like you who is a green builder, or do they need to find a green architect, or where is the best point to jump in if they have a renovation on their mind and they want to get involved and make it green? Where would you point them? What direction would you point them in?
Well, really, either way is fine. I work on a larger project. I have an architect involved. We collaborate. So you can either go with a design builder, that's like me, or a green architect. Um, if you go the architect route, it's important to be clear about what your budget is. I'll just
Mm,
say that.
mhm, mhm,
Um, there's no, as long as the person is trained and interested in green, it doesn't really matter what specific approach you're using, if that makes sense.
mm,
In
mhm,
other words,
mhm,
green architects are fine.
mhm.
I work with folks like that. It is helpful to check if someone, because everyone says they're green now.
Mm,
I'd ask them a few questions about what that means. Does that just mean your energy, or do they consider other factors as well, like the materials and your health?
mhm,
Ask
mhm,
them that question. If
mhm.
they're a quote screenwasher, they will not probably have great answers for that. So it's a good screening question.
You can smell them out. Well, thank you so much to Dr. Polly Bart of Green Builders Incorporated, and thank you to all of our viewers and listeners today. Make sure that you visit ChesapeakeFamily.com for up-to-date local information on home, health, and living for today's Maryland parent. This episode will be archived on ChesapeakeFamily.com in both video and podcast format. We will also make sure that we post all of Dr. Bart's recommendations and resources on the website. So make sure that you check those out as well. Next week, we will continue our sustainability series, and we will be chatting with Liana Vitali of Jug Bay to talk about citizen science. I'm Janet Jefferson with Chesapeake Family Life and Third Floor Views. Thank you so much.